Season 18 is here, and with all the new rank changes and the new skill-based matchmaking for duos and trios, the game has got a whole lot more difficult. And if you want to keep up, you need to be at the top of your game playing better than ever before. That's why in this video, I have, in my opinion, the best console and controller settings in Apex Legends. If you're wondering, I am using a scuff controller with paddles and control freaks. I'm not sponsored, but they do help me get a slight edge on my opponents, and if you're interested, I have a link to them in the description below. And I will get a small commission if you purchase using one of the links. Starting off all the way over to audio, this is what I have right now. So dialogue volume, you want to keep this on, but you don't want to have it too loud. The reason you want it on is because this is the in-game sounds the legends make, such as when they're telling you if a grenade is nearby, when they're saying someone is landing near you. It's those kind of sounds. So you don't want it all the way down, but you don't want it too loud. So I usually keep it around 45 to about like 60, somewhere around there. Music volume doesn't really matter. If you really want to try hard though, you can put it all the way down in 0% so you can hear everything in game that you need to hear. But I like to keep the music on just because it keeps the game more interesting for me, and it makes it so I don't get too bored. Sound effects volume, you always want to have this on 100% all of the time. That's because the sound effects volume is your footsteps volume, and you always want enemy footsteps to be as loud as possible. If you find it's too loud for you, and when enemies are shooting or you're shooting, it's just way too loud, your ears start to hurt, instead of lowering your sound effects volume, lower your master volume until you get to a point where it's perfect for you. Over to video, brightness, I keep it really high. The reason I like to have it high is because it makes dark corners of the map like that a little bit brighter, so if enemies are hiding in the corner, I'll show you if I put it all the way down. See how dark that is? If someone's hiding in there, I will not be able to see them. But when I have my brightness a little bit higher, so something around there, it's a little bit easier to see. If someone's hiding in there, I actually have a chance. And with all the people ratting and ranked, yeah, that is definitely an important setting. FOV, try to keep this around 90 to 110. I keep it at 106 most of the time. I don't keep it on 110 because I find the targets are a little bit smaller than I like. If I move it down to 106, they're a tiny bit bigger. It's pretty good, but yeah, I like 106, but again, personal preference. Another thing is if you do feel like you're losing frames, if you lower your FOV, then you'll actually get more FPS. So if you're on an older gen console, then lowering your FOV might be the best option. FOV ability scaling, you always want this off. If you have it enabled, it just makes it so when you use Stim or Bloodhound all, everything goes out of whack and your sensitivity will actually change. So FOV ability scaling, keep that off. Sprint view shake, always on minimal. Now over to gameplay. Interact prompt style, keep this on compact. Button hints, personal preferences, tells you what your buttons do what. I keep it off just because I like it to be more minimal on my screen. Crosshair damage feedback, keep this either off or X. I kind of switch around every now and then. It'll just show you the little X thing if you hit someone. Sometimes I keep it off because it's a little bit easier to see what I'm shooting at. I don't have extra clutter on my screen, but sometimes I turn it on just because it's a little bit satisfying being able to see the actual damage things. Damage numbers, keep this on stacking. Do not put it on floating or both. Just keep it on stacking. Ping opacity, faded. Obituaries, keep this on. Minimap rotation, I keep it off, but it is personal preference. So whatever game you're coming from, if you're playing like Call of Duty or some like Destiny or something with a different type of minimap rotation, choose that. But for me, having it off is the best. Weapon auto cycle on empty, I keep this on. Auto sprint, you want to keep this on just because it makes it so you have to press one less button in game. It makes movement a little bit easier, and it just makes everything a little bit faster. So I prefer auto sprint on. Some people like having it off, but if you want to just walk with auto sprint on, just push a little bit on your thumbstick and you can still walk. So it's not like you're losing the ability to walk if you have auto sprint on. Double tap to sprint, I have this off. Doesn't really matter though because I do have auto sprint on. Jetpack control, keep this on hold. Let's use Valkyrie's jetpack a little bit faster and you have a little bit more control over the jetpack. Incoming damage feedback, keep this on 2D or 3D. Don't keep it on both because then again, too much clutter. You don't want clutter. 2D or 3D, whatever you prefer. Taking damage closes death box or crafting menu. You 100% want this off. Don't even question it. Just keep it off. Hop up, pop up. Keep this on. Streamer mode. Sometimes I turn it on if I'm streaming, but usually I have it off. Anonymous mode. I keep this on just because sometimes players like to target me just because they see my name in the kill feed. So I keep it off. I don't want people hard focusing me. Performance display. This just tells you your frames per second and your ping if you look at the top right. You can turn it off if you want less stuff on your screen, so you can actually focus on your gameplay more, but sometimes I like to have it on just so if I'm lagging, I can notice why I'm lagging. So that's always nice. Clump invites disabled. Communication filter, everybody. Reticle, if you're wondering, that's what I'm using right now, yellow, but take this with a grain of salt because I do switch my reticle often. I do recommend you switch your reticle a lot just because it lets you focus on aiming better. You'll notice that if you switch your reticle after using a certain reticle for a long time, your aim will just automatically get better because you're paying closer attention. So what I like to do, Sometimes I'll be yellow, sometimes I'll be red, sometimes I'll be green, blue. Pretty much any color as long as I can see it. But yeah, I never stick with a reticle color for too long. Laser sight, this does not matter. If you're wondering, this is what I'm using just because I think it looks cool. And it kind of matches my channel colors. Colorblind mode off, subtitles off, subtitle size normal. Enable accessible chat features. This lets you talk to your enemies or your teammates in game just by typing. But usually I keep this off. Disable voice chat off. Convert incoming voice to text chat, again off. And then play incoming text chat as speech, also console setting off. Now over to what you guys all really want, controller. I know you guys want controller. So button layout, this is what I'm rocking. Now do keep in mind I have a scuff controller, which means I have 4 extra paddles on the back of my controller, meaning I don't ever have to move my thumb off of my aiming thumbstick to click every button. It's usually to hit your A, X, Y, B, or like your triangle, square, X, and circle, I think, on PlayStation. You have to move your right thumbstick off of your aiming stick. But for me, I do not have to worry about that because of my controller. I have a link to the controller I use down in the description. I do get a little kickback if you buy with that link, so if you want to support the channel, check it out. If you don't want to spend the $200 whatever dollars on the scuff controller, which is really expensive, completely understandable. I also linked Power A controllers in the description, which are really good controllers with buttons on the back, and they're only about a quarter of the price of a normal scuff controller. With all that in mind, this is what I'm using and what I find works for me. Stick layout, default, interact/reload button switches over from tap to use and hold to reload over to tap to use and reload. Crouch button, keep this on hold because it allows you to bunny hop and do certain movement tricks a little bit easier, and you could just crouch faster. If you see, if I crouch, that's how fast I can crouch. Now if I switch it over to toggle, this is how fast I crouch. Much faster on hold, so switch it over to hold. Aim button on hold, again, it's just faster. Survival slot button, keep this on. This lets you use your mobile respawn beacon, your heat shields, those type of things faster because it's one of your actual buttons. If you do keep it off, you can inspect your weapon and inspect your kunai or whatever you're using without having to open up your menu. So that is kind of cool, but if you really want to win the game and not just look cool, switch it on just in case you're caught out in the open, you need a heat shield or something, you do it really quickly. Trigger dead zones, keep this on none if you can. If you find you're accidentally aiming down sights or accidentally shooting, switch it over to default or moderate, but if you can, keep it on none. Menu cursor speed, you want to keep this around basically as high as you can without accidentally overshooting your things in death boxes. So I keep it around 3/4 of the way right here. Now my sensitivity, right now I'm running 4:3 linear with a small dead zone. It is so good. You can be really accurate and also control your recoil pretty well with linear. Now I do have a secret that makes the 4:3 linear even better. So normally if you do normal per optic settings, you can't really do much, but I actually have a secret trick so you can use ALC per optics with the normal sensitivity. I'll show you that in just a second. Movement dead zone, you want this on small unless you're accidentally moving without touching your thumbstick, then you can move to large, but usually you want it on small. Inverted look off. If you play on inverted, you're just a madman. Vibration, you might be used to playing with it on, but trust me, get used to having vibration off. All vibration does is just mess up your aim because it's hard to aim when your controller is literally moving. So keep it off. Leave the vibration for your mom, you don't need it. So advanced look controls, right now I have it off, but it still has the per optic settings of advanced look controls even if I have it off. So check this out. I turn it on, I go to per optic settings, I have it on, and this is what I'm using. 0.8, 1.0, 1.2, 1.4, and then 8x and 10x, I switch it back to 1.2. So even though my look sensitivity is 3, if you check out my 1x/iron sights, it's on 0.8. So in reality, I think my ADS sensitivity is 2.4 if I'm right. So it lets you be really accurate without having to go all the way down to 2 sensitivity, which is just a little bit too slow. So this is what I'm running. You can also change it a little bit without having to completely change your sense. Really good. Make sure you have it on though. You don't want it off. Leave it on. Now the custom look controls, this is what I used to use. They are really good. Probably even better than my normal settings I'm using right now. The reason I'm not using them is because when I find that I use ALC settings, I am changing them probably almost every day. I can be a big perfectionist and it's just not a good thing. If I switch these off, then it forces me to stick with 4:3 linear and really master it. And yeah, it's just I find myself switching these way too often, even though they are really good. But if you are looking for some good ALC settings, this is what you can use. And then if you want your other settings, just switch this off and you're back to normal. But all of the best possible settings won't do much for you if you don't have an in-depth understanding of how to aim, which is why you need to watch this video of how to aim like an Apex Predator in Apex Legends. And thanks for watching.